Welcome to She Sells Radio. I've got to tell you, my friend, if you want to build a show-stopping brand that generates attention, creates tons of leads for you, and also positively impacts the world, you're going to want to pay very close attention to the conversation I'm about to have today with our guest. And I am just so excited and honored to bring you this conversation today with Josh Pitts. He's a dear friend. He's a former client of mine. He's the founder of Shred Media, which is the world's #1 attention and impact network. And he has just completely changed the game for branding and social media, specifically in the mortgage industry. And he's the host of The Shred Show, which is the most popular podcast and live show, at least in the mortgage space, if not beyond that too, because I know you reach beyond that so far and draw in listeners from all industries, since your content is really, I think, the best in the world in terms of how to generate attention and create impact. And it's just so powerful. And I was honored to recently join him on his show. And I would say Josh is hands down the best show host and interviewer that I've ever been privileged to be interviewed by. And outside of all of this, he's a dedicated family man. He's got a beautiful family. He has a huge heart for service, standout guy all around. You shared with me, Josh, in the pre-chat that you're literally showing up today after having coached football last night and having a concussion, but you still showed up today for us. So yeah, it's just a testament to who you are and the fact that you literally live your brand and you show up for what matters. So thank you so much for being here today.
It is. I have goosebumps. One of the things that I have been, my brand is known for is introing people.
Yeah.
At least that's the best intro anyone has ever given me. So I'm almost emotional. Literally that was incredible. I'm truly humbled to be here with you because as I've shared with you and I share with your audience, you changed my life. You helped me in a time where when I was growing Shred, where you helped me through some of the toughest times when we were trying to build, doing this and that. And you helped me with what I know now of helping people with obscurity. Obscurity is what we help people with now. And you're the one who's helped me with that, who solidified that. So I can't thank you enough. It's truly such an honor. I'm just so, it makes me smile, concussion and all. I'm excited to be here. So if I'm a little off today, if I start ranting on something, that's what it is. But I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited too. And it's been, you have really done what I think so many of our listeners desire to do, are inspired to do, which is create this hugely impactful brand, create influence, create impact in their industry, obviously, be financially successful with what they're doing too, but giving and having that heart of service. And what I wanted to start off with is, I love this tagline for Shred Media, which is don't make noise, make an impact. And to me, that's there's so much good in that. And I want to dive right into that. We're going to talk about your story in a minute, but before we do, just right off the bat, Josh, what is the difference to you between making noise and making an impact?
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you asked that question because I get asked quite a bit, well, what is noise? What are you talking about? Yeah. We all have this incredible device that sits in our pocket. If you jump on any social platform, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever it is, there's so much noise out there. And when we're helping people, when we're guiding companies with building their corporate brand or building an executive brand or whatever it is, I always tell people there's a difference between just putting out content, putting out noise, as you call it, because most of us will just scroll. That's noise in our world. And it's such a noisy world. Our phones, from text messages to notifications, this and that, we're just always distracted. And when we're creating content for our audience, we have one of two ways to do it. We can just create content to create content and, kind of, as I like to say, the shotgun method, just putting it out there. If we have a company that's creating the cookie cutter post for us, that can be known as noise. It's not really, as somebody scrolling through, is it going to catch their eyeball, or is it just creating more clutter and noise in the social worlds? Impact is when I'm scrolling through one of the social channels and I see Elyse and I see something that she say, I see it not only catches my eye, but I know from past experiences, the things that I've heard her say, the things that I've seen you do are going to impact me, whether it just makes me smile that day or makes me feel good or gives me inspiration. That's what impactful content is all about. And if you are a company, if you're an individual, and you're going down this journey of building a brand and starting to create content, you have to keep that in mind. I tell people it is far more impactful and more important to put out fewer posts that are going to impact the audience than it is to, a lot of people argue like, well, you know, content is king. Like I just need to get massive amounts of content. And Gary Vaynerchuk, who I have massive respect for, I've talked to many times and interviewed, like, he always talks about content, you know, put 10 pieces of content a day. And I argue for most people getting started, I would prefer to see them putting out meaningful content, doing this type of medium where they're, you know, they're talking to, they're really, you can see the rawness that the word authenticity is thrown around too much these days, but the authentic you know, the authentic Elyse, that makes way more of an impact. Your introduction, how you spoke about, that makes an impact. How are you impacting people's lives through the content you're putting out? Don't just put out content to put out content. That's just noise. Plus people once you see that people are just making noise, you and I do it. We do it as human beings. We don't even know that we're doing it, but we start to scroll. That's that scroll effect where we're just scrolling past. So when you are making that impactful content that stops people, that's the difference. So that's kind of the difference in making noise and impact. And I guess in my eyes.
Oh, that's so good. And I've never thought about it that way, that it literally is, it's like noise, 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 scroll, scroll, scroll until there's something that was more intentional. And it's almost a relief to hear you say that, because you've built such a big brand based off of content, and to hear you say it's not so much about the volume, because it can feel so overwhelming. I was working with a client yesterday and she was like, I'm parting ways with my Instagram marketing agency because they were like, you need to it was just an overwhelming amount of content and it had to all be so pre-planned. And it's not that we don't want it's not that we don't want structure and order to what we're doing, but it felt, I think, crippling to her to feel like she had to be pushing out so much and have it just be so like, it was from the head, not from the heart. So to me, it's like, you just gave us all permission to slow down a bit and really connect, like from our heart, what do we want to say? Not just, let me check the box that I did this. You know?
It's interesting you say that, because we were literally working with a client yesterday too, that they sometimes marketing departments, they even feel the pressure from the upper levels saying, we need more content. We need more content. When I said like I even told them, I said, I looked at their content. We kind of did a consultation with them and broke it down. I'm like, hey, you're putting out tons of content, but like, look at the content, like you as a person, you as a mortgage or an industry professional, does that actually, like, when you read your content, does that stop you? Does that stop your eyeballs? Is that like, whoa, is that? And like, it clicked for this gal, but here's the problem, Elyse. This is what, like, it hurt my heart. She's like, but Josh, we as a department, we as a marketing team are like, if we're not putting out more and more content, we're judged according to like, are we actually making a difference within our organization? And I'm like, man, are we the ones creating the problem, you know, from top down? Are we like pushing our marketing departments and our teams to say, no, it's all about mass quantity. And I know it sounds so cliche, quantity versus quality, but at the same time, it really does, especially in this noisy world of social media. I know me, somebody who literally spends hours upon hours of social media, I would rather see one piece of content that just like, whoa, like that. And it is sad. It is unfortunate that there are some organizations out there who kind of like, no, quantity is all we care about.
And it's just, it's short-sighted. Like it really is. And we get it, because people want to have something to measure. And, you know, maybe one of the things we can get into talking about here, which would be interesting, is like, how do we measure impact versus, versus just quantity and spitting stuff out. Before we get into that though, because I want everyone to get to know you. I know a lot of my listeners, especially those in the mortgage and real estate space, are probably familiar with you, but if someone's not, take us through, how did you get here? Like this, you built such an amazing brand, such an amazing business. I don't think, if I know you enough, I don't think this is necessarily what you started off envisioning, but it's been incredible what you've created. So tell us, what got you to the point where you are with Shred?
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, in a nutshell, I wanted to be a doctor. Like, my dad, like, I prepared so like diligently in high school. I was going to college, like I was going into pre-med, and I was literally sitting in a cadaver class, which if you know what a cadaver is, like I was sitting there watching somebody be dissected. And I was like, I can't do this for the next 8 to 10 years. Like
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, there's no way. Like I just mentally, if you know me too, I have ADD, which is really bad. Like, and I'm just like, as much as I want to help people in this way, I want to like literally like physically save lives. Like I just can't do this. So I went into sales, got started in sales, did that for a couple of years, and then got into mortgage. Like anybody in mortgage knows, like none of us planned on getting into mortgage. It's not like a dream as a kid. Like I want to be a mortgage advisor. Like that's what I want to do in life. But I got into it very quickly. I had an incredible mentor. And my very first transaction, when me and my wife bought our first home, when we got married, we got absolutely taken advantage of. Like we got so like and this was back in like 2007, 2008, when things were like, or 2009, when things were kind of coming out of the crash, when regulations were terrible. Anyway, we got absolutely taken advantage of, thousands of dollars, high interest rate, but I didn't know. I just didn't know that. Like we didn't know. So that was kind of at the back of my mind. A buddy of mine said, hey, I had started doing some marketing stuff on social media at that time. That's kind of when I first got my, like, hey, this social media thing's kind of fun. And he said, hey, I could use your help. Come help us in my mortgage company. So I went over there and I started seeing these people, like these guys and gals making, double six figures. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Like, what are they doing? They're like, oh, they're selling loans. They're selling mortgages. And I'm like, and respect, I'm like, if these idiots can do it, I can do it. Like, they're not any smarter than I am. Like, so I got licensed, and I say that respectfully because all those people are some of my greatest friends now. And they were my greatest mentors and like my leaders at that time who helped me, become. So my very first this is what solidified it for me though, Elyse, is my very, very first transaction. This is no lie. Very first transaction. A friend of mine from high school, him and his wife were buying their first home. And they called me up and they said, hey, we saw a post on Facebook, because I posted like, hey, I just got licensed as a mortgage professional. And this was back like when the wild, like I still didn't know jack about Facebook. And I'm just like, hey, if you ever have any questions about mortgages or like real estate, give me a call. They saw that post. They called me and they're like, hey, can you help us with this? Can you look it over? And I looked it over and knew immediately they were being taken advantage of. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and I'm like, no, this is terrible. You don't sign this. Like they're absolutely like hosing you guys on this. Anyway, fast forward, we close the mortgage. We're sitting at the closing table and I'm sitting across from her and she literally has a tear run down her eye. And I'm like, oh no, like I thought I screwed up. I thought I did something wrong. I was like, no, like I tried so hard on my first transaction. And I'm like, what's wrong? And she's like, Josh, we're achieving the dream of homeownership and you helped us do that. Like you helped us like do something that my parents said at this young age, we'd never be able to achieve. And you did it like in such a way that was so helpful. And that's when the light bulb clicked. I'm like, wow, I'm not just selling mortgages. Like I'm helping people achieve that dream of home ownership. So fast forward to, I had an incredible run as a mortgage advisor for years and years. I owned a mortgage company in Utah, grew it with a good partner of mine. It was a ton of fun. And then about 3.5, 4 years ago, I was literally at a mortgage conference and, social media still in the industry was kind of like, oh, it's just a side thought. Like nobody uses social media. But what's funny is my very first transaction was from social media, from Facebook.
Yeah.
That's what clicked for me. I'm like, whoa. But we're sitting in this mortgage conference and somebody says, you know what we need? There's tons of marketing firms. There's tons of PR firms. There's tons of these companies that do this and that, but nobody creates organic content. Nobody creates like authentic content for social media. And I said, well, I kind of do that. I could do that. And they laughed. Like these are executives, like these are high ranking executives. And I'm like, why do you laugh? Like, what do you mean? Like we could totally, I'm like, you just create a media company that actually helps you guys produce the content that you want to make an impact on the audience. Your audience is mortgage professionals. That's what you want. And they said, okay, good luck, Josh. And so I kind of was like, all right, challenge accepted. I'm going to do it. And now they're like our biggest clients, which is like, gosh. They're the ones that, they laughed at the beginning and now they're the ones that are paying us, incredible amounts to help them produce and create content for them and telling their story and making an impact. So that Shred Media started 4 years ago. So that was kind of a long, but that's it. I just saw like, I'm not a spiteful or a vengeful person, but when somebody like says, hey, no, you can't, I'm like, yes, I can. Like, sure. Like, challenge accepted. Have I had speed bumps and challenges along the way? Absolutely. Have I made mistakes? Oh my gosh, I can't even like explain how many mistakes we've made, but I've learned and we've grown and we have an incredible team and found great people like you. I wouldn't have been able to do it without the incredible, like people that I've surrounded myself. And I
Yeah.
truly mean that you were one of those. You know the struggles I went through with Shred, like mentally, emotionally. Building a business is hard. And for anybody out there going through this journey, building a brand, building a company's reputation, it takes time, but you can do it. I
Yeah.
promise. You'll make it.
Oh my gosh, that was so powerful. And there's two things that I want to pull out from what you just said. One is I didn't realize that this is, I mean, 4 years is 4 years, but like what you've built, I think a lot of people would look at that and say, it's been like a decade, it's been more. So number one, just showing what's possible in a short amount of time when you're focused. And then the second is your mindset around, oh, you don't think this can be done? Challenge accepted, which is so powerful, because what I find is I've done this in my own life. I know other people listening have as well, where it's like, we can let other people's limiting beliefs become our own. And in that moment, you could have said, well, this, high ranking executive from yada, yada company is saying it can't be done. So who am I to think it can? But instead, no, you were like, challenge accepted. Let me show you. I'm curious, have you always been that way, or was that a mindset you had to cultivate in yourself?
Oh no, I've always been that way. Like it was kind of the same way. I mean, even when I left medical school, when I started going into sales, that's always been like challenge accepted. And the same thing, like when I started when me and my partner started a mortgage company, I had somebody like, no, you can't start a mortgage company. You can't compete in this day and age. And then we did, and we grew it to be one of the biggest mortgage companies in all of Utah. So great. Again, like I don't do it to prove people wrong. I do it to prove to myself that I can. Like I could, like, I literally, when I say this, I mean, human nature, sure, to some extent, we all we care what others think, but at the same time, like, I know what means the most to me is my family and my closest friends around me. And as long as I can take care of our needs and still like have the time into like the love and the passion for them and what I do, then what other people think I don't care about. And if I would have failed, hey, trust me, I've had companies, we could go into companies that I have failed horribly with. I owned an outdoor company that went belly up and lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, we learn, we live, we grow. Does everything work out? No, but anyway.
And I appreciate you sharing that too, because it's helpful for people to hear that, because they'll look at your website and what you've built and be like, oh my gosh, it's like Midas touch, right? But to hear, no, there was a lot behind the scenes that you learned from and grew from on the way, because everybody, it's like we've got entrepreneurs listening, we've got salespeople listening, everyone who's an entrepreneur, sales professional, who's really successful, like they have had things that felt like big failures at the time. But I bet the landscape company that went belly up, I bet you learned something that you needed to know in order to be able to grow Shred to where it is today. Like, absolutely. I 100% know that. And here's what I want to ask. So in a moment, we can't have you on here and not talk content strategy and all that, because I know that's what so many of my listeners want to know. But what I want to know too is just following up on the last point you made about you've learned so much in these 4 years and you've built a very large, very successful organization. But what's one thing that looking back, it's like, ooh, this would have been helpful to know, or maybe one lesson that felt tough at the time, but that really was super valuable to help you get to where you are now?
Oh man, there's so many, but I would say the one that has stood out that I've learned most, and I've even struggled with, is consistency is key. Like in whatever it is, like whether it's content, whether it's growing a brand, whether it's whether you're an entrepreneur, consistency is the key to everything. Like, especially when it comes to content and building a brand in particular, you have to stay consistent. And it's a struggle. You know this, like to put out content on a regular basis that you enjoy doing is difficult. Like, it's not just something that it's like, hey, this is easy. This is super, like, this is it. Sometimes hopefully you're having fun with it. I always tell people, if you're not having fun with what you're doing and creating the content that you are and making an impact, then it may not be for you. And I tell people, like, hey, it's not, doing this is not for everybody. Like, I wish it was, but the fact of the matter is just not. But the consistency factor, that's what has ultimately helped. And to your point you made a second ago, people have looked at our brand and humbly, there are companies that are in our same space and other even media companies that have been around for 10, 12, 15, 20 years. One company like that is probably looked at our biggest competitor, has been around for 20 years. And to this day, me and the CEO are very good friends. He's like, he always has this joke, like, I can't believe you've done in 4 years what it took us 20 years to do. And he asked me on a recent interview, he's like, how'd you do it? And I'm like, consistency, dude. Like that. I just stayed consistent. I just continued to create the content, even when people weren't watching. Like even when and vanity metrics are real. They're going to mess with your head. They're going to mess with your emotions, but you got to forget about it. Just stay consistent, whether it's once a week, whether it's twice a week. Dedicate yourself to that, whatever you can truly commit yourself to, and stay consistent with it for a year, 2 years. And like you said, we've been doing this for, almost 4 years now. And still we're continuing to learn and to grow. And and I feel like personally, we're still just starting this journey. There's still so much opportunity. And, others say, well, you've made it, you're successful. And I'm like, once you've begun that journey and you've begun to learn and to grow, that journey always continues. Like the consistency is what just helps you continue to drive and to help that long-term success, if you will.
That is so powerful. I got chills when you shared that, especially when you said like when doing it when no one is watching, and that can be tough. I mean, I think I'm curious to get your perspective on it. To me, that's like the weaning out phase where most people won't keep going through it because they get disappointed. They do it for a few days, a few weeks, and they don't see much and they get disappointed. But part of this is what I'm so excited to hear from you, because you're at the cutting edge of this stuff and you study this and you're creative and it's just your genius to create this content that really does make an impact for people. And it is different today than it was, even a few years ago. You'll maybe laugh at this. I got a notification from YouTube the other day that was like, look back at it was like a 9-year anniversary. I was like, I started creating content on YouTube 9 years ago. And some of those first videos, without having any brand, they were getting like hundreds of views, some of them thousands of views. And it's been this whole journey of lots of traction and then having to take it all down, doing a non-compete and building again. And it's been like different as I've rebuilt. It takes a little more time, at least I found on my end. But from what you're doing, like when you look at maybe the top 2 to 3 keys to really creating impact today, like to stopping the scroll with content, what are you seeing that is most impactful now in today's environment?
Most impactful right now. We live in a difficult world. Like we really do. Well, from, things that are going on, overseas, around the country, political battles. I never get into politics. I never get into any of that. But what makes an impact in people's lives most, number one, is being like, again, I've kind of shared this, but it's being the real you. Because you have to remember this, is social media was originally designed when Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook, they were literally rating other people. They were literally trying to connect in a way, in an awkward way, if you think about how Facebook started. But then it was designed to truly build relationships. And that's what it's designed for. And especially as it's evolved, I know people love to argue my point of well, no, Josh, it's purely to make money now and to build a pipeline. For most of us, what social media can still be utilized for is to build a relationship. So when you're creating that content, when you're, trying to make that impact in people's lives, you have to think about it in that way. I always tell people, if you're creating content, and going back to this idea of scroll stopping content, what is going to, if you were to walk into a party with your friends, your friends invite you to a party, if you were to walk in and throw an ad hey guys, what's up? I'm good. I'm excited to be here. By the way, did you know rates are at all-time lows? Or, hey, did you know that this is on sale this week? Your friends are going to laugh at you. They're going to be like, come on, Josh, that's not you. Elyse, that's not you.
Yeah.
But if you come in and you're your normal self, you're talking about the game over the weekend, or you're talking about the things that they know you for, they appreciate you for, that's that is really what is making an impact in people's lives. And people love, they're like, well, Josh, my company says I can't post personal stuff. Then number one, you should leave your company. If you really have somebody who's, and I mean that respect, and I know people are like, well, that's a huge change. But if and this happens a lot in mortgage and real estate, I've seen it, and in other professions too, companies want to try to hold people back from actually being themselves. They're like, well, no, we got to be compliant. We got to be careful. We can't offend anybody. And I always tell people, you have to be you. those are the people like I watch most. Those are the impactful posts that I'm engaging with that make a difference in my life, that make an impact in my life. So you have to be willing to get over this barrier that social media is truly just a sales platform. It's not. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube. It's meant to entertain. It's meant to educate. And again, I'm not saying that you can't like put content out that's again making an impact. Again, my post, going back to my very first post that my friends saw and they ended up using me as a mortgage advisor. It was simple. It was easy. It wasn't a perfect post. I love, like you said, going back to my early videos on YouTube and Facebook, and I'm like, wow, they're so bad, but they're so real. That's what's making an impact. So I always tell people, if you're just starting this journey too, the last thing that you want to do is come out and like make a video like, hey, this is, so-and-so, and I'm a mortgage professor or advisor, and I want to help you buy your next home, or I want to help you save interest rate. Like that's just not what it's for. Be real. Be like, hey, I'm starting this journey. I'm excited to share my life with you. I'm excited to share the things, the hardships, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we all, as human beings, we have the good, the bad, and the ugly. We all go through difficulty and challenges in our life. Some of us have kids, and that's a whole argument and discussion for you and your family and your spouse is if you want to share your kids. I love sharing my kids because I know other people have kids. I know the frustrations of being a parent, sharing those type of things. That's what's impactful, Elyse. And again, people are like, well, that's not business building. It's not business building. It's relationship building. It's trust. It's confidence. That's what social media, that's what it allows us to do on such a grander scale. That's what you should look at every post going into it is like, is this, whether it only resonates with one person or a million people, that's how you should look at every single one. Because even if it's just that one and not that million, that means you've impacted one person's life that day. And that's all it is. What if you just impact one person's life every single day, 365 days a year? That means you've impacted 365 people's lives over the year. And that continues to compound. That's what really is impactful when it comes to social media. So sorry, that was a long explanation of what's impactful, but that's it. It's real content.
Gosh, that was so powerful though. That was so powerful. I keep getting chills while you talk about this stuff because it's just like, yes, this is how we do it. And to me, as you talk about it too, this show is at the end of the day, a lot of it's about sales. It's about helping people create more financial abundance in their lives. But I love, this is sales at the end of the day too. It's that relationship building. And one of the things that most inspired me to create this brand was just coming from some of the hardcore sales backgrounds of, I say hardcore, but door to door, right? Or yellow pages back in the day when that was a thing. And it just felt so, how I was trained to sell growing up, say this script, do this thing, don't walk away until the person says yes. And it was just felt slimy and gross. And I think that gets carried over into our content too, right? When we're not being intentional about it. So I appreciate your perspective on that. And this is what works at the end of the day. This is what works. So if you have anything you want to add on that, I'd love your thoughts. I've got another question for you, but yeah, go ahead.
No, it's so, what I want to know is you do this, you've made such an impact in my life. You see it. What do you see? What do you spend a lot of time, you coach, you guide people on this journey. What are you seeing that makes an impact in people's lives?
Oh my gosh. These are good questions, man. These are the good questions today. I'll speak to myself and I'll tie this in with content too, in the conversation we're having here. We have a content calendar. We tie it in with what we're doing for the business at the time, which is so we tie it in with our revenue initiatives. And I think that's helpful and important because I've done the opposite and it's been willy-nilly is the word that's coming to mind. There hasn't been focus, there hasn't been intention, and it's been a little all over the place. But what I've seen is I can feel it in my body when I'm creating something that is going to create better impact versus just this was on the calendar for this week, so we're going to do it. Yep. And it's that it's literally creating from the heart. This is something I'll give an example. I did this post yesterday and I haven't even looked to see if, what happened with it, but visiting my 97-year-old grandma a couple of weeks ago, we took our son up on a surprise trip to Kentucky to meet her because she's not traveling these days. So it was if she was going to meet him, then we were going to have to come to her. And I just kind of shared the story of from the heart. There was a lot of challenges on that trip. There was a blizzard. We almost turned, we got the baby screaming, like dirty diaper. There's a blizzard. We can't get out of the car. All the hotels are sold out because of the blizzard. So there's a lot of challenges getting up there, but then like seeing the look on her face and knowing, hopefully she lives a lot longer, but also knowing this may be the time that she gets to meet our son, and just sharing like time is the currency and making memories is the currency. Like that, as I created it, that was like, if I look back at the end of my life and don't think so much about the metrics, like when I look back, I'm not going to think about how many people liked this post or how many people it clicked it. It's like, no, like what actually was heartfelt and meaningful that I used this cool, amazing platform that we all have of social media to share. So that's what comes to mind when you ask that. And it's like a body feeling. Like, I think does that happen for you too? Like you just know when it's
so impactful? Funny that you say that. And like you talk about a content calendar, because I think content calendars are amazing. I've had content calendars for our audience before. I've switched it from content calendar to creative calendar, because a lot of times, like I'll see the post, or like, I always tell like the people that we work with and we try to help is, if you see the post and it doesn't resonate with you, if it's not like you said, if you feel it, if you don't feel it, you don't have to post it. But maybe what it did for you is it maybe sparked something else. Maybe it sparked another idea or another conversation or something like, what I just read, what's on my calendar to post today. I like that, but I'm going to go make it my own. I talk about this a lot. Like Still Like an Artist by Austin Kleon is probably one of my favorite all-time books. I talk about it a ton. If you haven't read it, it's a very simple book. It's almost like a picture book, but he just goes into some very simple like explanations of stealing like an artist. There's all kinds of ideas in the world. Most ideas have already been thought of. Most ideas have already been said, or all you need to do is find the inspiration to go. If I see you post something, that's why I felt like the people that I follow, I do it with intention, because if I see a post of yours and it resonates, like you said, I feel it like right here. I'm like, oh, wow. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go take what Elyse just said and I'm going to make it my own. Like, I never tell anybody to plagiarize. I never tell anybody like to copy word for word or like steal something from somebody, but I'm going to go and I'm going to take what Elyse said and I'm going to put it in my own words. And again, what's really cool about it, even if I said verbatim what you said, I say it in a little bit of different way. I say it in a little bit different, like my mannerisms, my audience is going to resonate different with my audience. And people always say, well, like, Josh, isn't that like, don't people like, if they're all saying the same thing, isn't it the same message? No, because what's so cool about social media and our audiences and the people that we love is, even if you and I were to say the exact same message, it's still going to resonate with people. We each have a God-given gift and ability and a talent to impact people's lives uniquely. You are going to impact people's lives that I never could, even if I said the same thing in an incredibly impactful way. There are some people who just don't connect with me. There are some people who don't connect with Josh. They're going to connect with Elyse. So thus, like this idea that you're talking, like, it's so cool to be able to see somebody when they take a content calendar or a creative calendar and they make it their own. They say, hey, that's not the post I want today, but it gave me an idea. So I'm going to go with it.
So good. It's so good. And it makes me think about too, for someone who says, who's going to want to hear from me? Right. And I know, like, especially when I was first starting and doing, and there was like no feedback, there was nothing. And that thought came up of like, who really, I remember I had a coach once who said something like, how are you showing up today for the clients who are magnetized to you? And she said that. And I was like, where are they? What clients? But I started it got something going in me where I was like, well, what if there were people who were magnetized, and how would I show up for them today? And it shifted a mindset. But did you ever bump up against that? Like, how do people overcome that? If they're like, why me? Like, why would anyone be interested in my life?
Oh, I still continue, like, even where I'm at in this journey, like I tell people, I still sometimes and it goes back to your point. If I'm not putting out content that I just feel like, yes, this is it, like, that's it. I put out content still that I'm like, man, that was okay. And we do it because, again, that's kind of what you get into this rhythm almost. But I always tell people, like, that mindset is probably the hardest. That is what you're going to struggle with, especially as you mentioned, as you alluded to earlier, this journey is difficult. You're going to want to give up after 10 days. You're going to want to give up after a month, 60 days, 90 days, 1 year, because you're going to have like, you're going to see that you're going to be like, does anybody care? Is this making an impact? Does it matter? And of course it does. Because again, maybe you had 0 views, 0 engagements on that post of the day before, or even the week before, but the next one, that's the one that, again, maybe it's just 1, and then maybe it goes to 2. We have to it is the hardest thing. And everybody listening, I know you do such an incredible job with this in the way that you guide people and you help people, because I know you've done it for me, but you just have to put that mindset out of your mind, and you have to come from the mindset of, I'm doing this for, yes, of course, for you, because it helps you grow, you learn, but I'm doing this for others. One of the biggest roadblocks and mental blocks I talk to executives about is a lot of times they're like, well, Josh, isn't it self-serving? Isn't it egotistical if I'm putting out content saying, look at me, like, hey, I'm building my brand, and I want to say, look at me. I said, it is if you think that way. I said, if you're thinking that way, saying, I'm going to build a brand so people are look at me, then you're doing it from the wrong place. And you're probably going to struggle with the journey. But if you're coming from a place of, I'm going to do my best to once a day impact somebody's life, and I'm going to create the content around that, the mindset, that struggle becomes less and less about you and more about the people that you're impacting, more about the people that are around you. That's the only way I've got over it. Like I said, I still to this day struggle with it. Creating content to this day, I love it. This is what I love. I told you, I've looked forward to this the entire week. I love doing this medium. I love talking. I love doing podcasts. I love doing shows, because something that you have said today, possibly something that I have said, the audience, the listeners, it's going to just make one little, and again, it doesn't have to be monumental. What I love about this, it's the 1% changes that make all the difference in life. It just has to be 1%. Like, maybe today you're going to make a shift that makes you 1% better. Maybe you're going to start this journey. You're going to start, the 1%. And it's, if we try to take these tasks all at once, it's overwhelming. Like you mentioned in the beginning, so many companies, it's so overwhelming to do all this. Just start 1% better every single day. And then eventually you'll see, not only are you doing it, but you find the joy in the journey, and you found that man, I am making an impact. So
it's so good. And that 1% rule, it's the compound effect, right? You can apply
100%.
it to everything, like day after day after day. And it takes this big goal that seems insurmountable. And it's like, I could do 1%. I think that would be a great challenge I'm going to take it for myself. And then for our listeners too, just to say, what could I do 1% better today? What would 1% better than yesterday look like? And let me just do that. And that's success. And maybe I hit it, maybe I don't, but it's still I went for it. And that was success. So oh my gosh, I want to have you on again and again and again, because I feel like there's so much for us to talk about. First of all, thank you for everything that you've shared from just your heart standpoint, mindset, content. I've got so many new ideas from just a marketing standpoint, and I think I just a powerful mindset standpoint. I want to ask you briefly about sales, and then I want you to tell everyone where they can go to connect with you and get connected with you in Shred. So I'm just curious, because the show at the end of the day is a lot about sales.
Of course.
You're a just superstar when it comes to obviously marketing, but sales too. And you've built multiple very successful companies. What is one thing that you think, if someone said, I want to get 1% better at sales tomorrow, and then the next day and the next day, what's one thing they can do that's going to make a big difference for them?
Oh my gosh, that is a deep question. That's really good. I almost want to say be 1% better, but I would actually go with the show up. That's what our brand and I'm not just saying it. I've seen so many people in sales that it's not about the next phone call. It's not about the next sale. It's not about the pipeline. It's showing up every single day. And I literally I almost feel bad. I almost feel like it's self-serving in this. But when I came up with the acronym, show up, hustle, repeat every day for Shred, it was purely just showing up. A lot of my success I attribute to showing up, even on the days I didn't want to, that were difficult, where I had to have difficult conversations, because it was those difficult conversations. It was the people that I surrounded myself when I did show up that helped me become who I am today. showing up in sales, you will learn lessons. You may not even make a sale that day. Like you probably won't. Like, and I'm not trying to be discouraging, but it's just the fact that you got yourself out of bed. You were willing to go, like I mentioned earlier, life is difficult. We live in a very tumultuous world right now. There's a lot going on, and just showing up, you have proved to yourself and to those around you that no matter how dark, no matter how difficult it may seem, you're going to be there. You're going to continue to show up. You're going to continue to push yourself because you want to strive to become better. You want to serve those people around you. So when it comes to sales, I always tell people, you got to continue to show up. You got to continue to put in the reps. All of us who, a lot of people know that I love fitness. Like this morning, I'll be very honest. When I hit the gym, my head was ringing this morning. And I was like, I don't want to do it today. I don't want to work out. I don't want to go through the reps. But I said, but if I don't, will I slip tomorrow? Like as soon as you stop showing up, that's when the world gets very dark, because that's when your mindset starts to slip, oh, I'm not good. You start to, get into a dark place yourself. I just tell people to show up no matter how difficult it may be. Even if you're working, continue to show up. And you'll learn lessons. You'll learn lessons about yourself. You'll have people impact your life. I always tell people too, you may not impact somebody's life today, but sometimes you need the impact of other people in your life, and showing up could do that for you.
Oh man, that's so good. That's so good. And it makes it easy in a way, right? It's like, if you just keep showing up. And I feel like that's been so much of the theme of today, with the consistency, with the show up, and the results almost take care of themselves if we keep doing that. So you, my friend, are a gem. I am so grateful for you. I'm grateful that you showed up today with the concussion and all, and just gave us so much inspiration and so much really upliftment and encouragement too, of what's possible when we keep showing up. So Josh, please tell everyone, what's the best way for people to connect with you, to find out more about what you do working with you? I'd love if you could tell people where to go for that.
Yeah, of course, you can go to shredmedia.com. You can find us on type in Shred Media on any social channel. You can find us. And I love the support. If we can ever do anything for you, reach out and let us know. But I'm truly humbled and honored and grateful for you. Like I said in the beginning of this, you changed my life. My wife, even, she was excited for me to talk with you. She's like, oh, you're talking to Elyse today. She's like, have fun, enjoy that one. And she knows, I went to bed last night in a terrible headspace. And I got up this morning. She's like, are you good? I'm like, for Elyse, for this? Absolutely. And she knows the impact you had on my life. So I'm grateful for you, for all that you do, for how you serve your community and you serve everybody. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. And I actually want to ask one final question. I love asking this question, especially when we have men on the show, because it's She Sells Radio. We have a mixed audience, which I love. But for you, Josh, what would you say is the number one life lesson that you've learned from your wife?
Oh my gosh. It's funny, as I was getting ready to go on the show this morning, I just text her. I'm like, hey, she's all about the love languages. She's really big into those. And I've learned so much from her in that regard. What I probably learned more than anything, she has supported me through the fails. She's seen me go through tough times of crumbling businesses, the successes, the failures. But the one lesson I've learned from her, probably more than anything, is that even how dark it is, we still are blessed. We still live we have one another, we have healthy kids, and it's going to be okay. And I know that seems super cliche, but that's what I am sometimes. Believe it or not, I'm the pessimist. I'm like, the world is falling, things are bad. And she's the one who is always hey, she'll look me in the eyes, she'll give me a kiss, and she's like, it's okay. We can do this together. As long as we have each other, as we continue to communicate, we can get through anything. And I know everybody's relationships are different, and spouses and whatever it is, but I always tell people if you support your spouse, if you support your wife, your husband, and you truly do hey, everything's going to be okay, especially in the darkest times. Still, most of us live in situations and circumstances that we are pretty blessed to live in the country and the situation, the circumstance we do. So that's the number one thing I've learned from my wife is it's going to be okay. We've got each other. We're going to get through it.
It's the most powerful perspective on the up and down journey that is sales, that is entrepreneurship. We can, like, I know my head can get so like something that's actually little in the big scheme of things, we can make big, and it's really not at the end of the day. And having that perspective, like, she's so wise, and that's so true. And at the end of the day, we got to remember what matters and what's important, and that it is all going to be okay. So
Yep.
thank you for just coming in and sharing your heart. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for you and for our listeners. Like, please go connect with Josh. You are going to be so inspired by so many things, how he creates his content, his heart. If you want to learn how to become just a phenomenal interviewer, like, start listening to the podcast too. I know we've got a lot of listeners who host podcasts and are wanting to grow in that area. And like I said, Josh is the best. And just such a role model of what it means to be just a standout, standout entrepreneur and just human being all around. So grateful for you, my friend. Thank you for being here. And to you, my listener, thank you so much for listening to She Sells Radio. I'll see you on our next episode. Bye for now.